Interrupt this incredibly awesome music to bring you some incredibly awesome political talk on Damn Radio.
Hello, good morning, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are listening to Damn Radio. Coming to you live today from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. Feel free to call in should you feel the desire. 573-746-8020 is the number that I might answer. And then again, I might not. That's just the way it happens sometimes. Sometimes I feel like babbling. You ever hear of Babylon? Mm-hmm. Sometimes Sam likes to babble on. Get it? Was that, what do you call it? Play on words? A word game, as it were. At any rate, we're gonna do some chatting this morning. There was a rather interesting day yesterday. I enjoyed it. I detest what they call government overreach. Drives me crazy. Most of you know my history. Since I'm a historic fellow, I've made some history, that's for damn sure, certainly in the state of Missouri and all the way to the United States Supreme Court with the BS of, government overreach, let's call it. Government overreach is just a theme these days, and the government just loves to do more than they are allowed or required. And there's seems to be something, and I've complained about this from my very first days in the Army when I was a young, 20-ish guy. From the very beginning, you'd see, and I never did understand it, the people who are so proud of their achievement, as it were, of obtaining a position in the government that where they get to tell people what to do, that they just can't help telling people what to do in every sphere of life. And it doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what you desire, doesn't matter anything. All that matters is that person being able to take authority over something. And it just seems to be more than prevalent in the service of government. Now, I honor people who create something. You remember the Obama years when you didn't build that, I built that. Okay, here's a guy telling you what all he's going to do for you. He built things, right? He built that for you. He is the founder of the feast. The government is not the founder of the feast. At least it shouldn't be. And but there's a class, an entire class of people that just think that government is the answer to everything, and they want to tell you. You go from the basics of COVID. Okay, here's a story in COVID. So in Colombia, I don't mean to pick on Colombia, but it always just seemed like in Colombia you could always run into these folks, right? And so during COVID, I traveled around. I was doing some things, traveling around a little bit. And I didn't. I was not a masker. And I didn't tell other people what to do. Never did it. I'm not that type of guy. I don't tell you what to do. I do what I'm gonna do. I'd prefer it if you don't tell me what I'm gonna do. And so I'm up in Columbia, some decent grocery store, whether it's a Hy-Vee or a Schnucks or something like that. I don't remember, but I'm in a decent grocery store. I'm at the meat counter. I want to buy I'm going to have some steaks cut, and I'm going to get some steaks, and I'm standing there in line. My wife and I are speaking Russian at the time, not wearing masks, just speaking Russian about something, going on. I don't remember what we were talking about. Some woman comes wandering up, and she's they call them on the internet Cathys, right? This is some Cathy gets to, whether it's your HOA Cathy, whether it's your government Cathy, it's somebody they're in charge, and boy, they're going to tell you what you're going to do. And she comes walking up, and real meek, and comes walking up, touches me on the arm. Excuse me, She said, "Excuse me, you're not wearing a mask." I was like, "No, I'm not." And she kind of was taken aback because we'd been speaking Russian, And she says, I'm my English is, I'm illiterate in 2 languages, and so I was, just as illiterate in English as I am in Russian. And I said, "No, we're not wearing a mask. Thank you." And she goes, "Well, Colombia, you're there's an ordinance and you have to wear a mask." I said, "Well," she said, "and you're going to, you're going to get other people sick." I was like, "Am I?" I said, that presumes quite a few things, but, I will choose whether I wear a mask or not." She goes, "Well, you have to wear a mask." I said, "Well, I'm not going to wear a mask." She says, "Well, you're going to get me, you're going to get me sick." I was like, "Not if you stayed over there." I said, "What happened to your 6 feet rule is going to save me? What happened to that?" I said, "Here you are, you come up and you see me. If you weren't standing next to me, presuming I was sick, you wouldn't get sick, And then she got nasty. And she said, first she used a regular swear word, "Well, that you're just a shitty person," or something like that, that she said. And then I was like, "Oh, well, that's pleasant." I said, "Because I disagree with you, suddenly I'm a shitty person." And my wife was going, "Oh, geez, will you quit talking?" I was like, "Look, we're trying to order some steaks here." She goes, "Well, I can't believe you effing people." And then she stormed away. It's like, "Well, thank you. Have a nice day." Well, it's people like that just drive me crazy. You wouldn't have been sick if you didn't come up and see me. You wouldn't. It's not your affair if I choose to speed down the highway. If you want to call the police and rat me out, fine. If that lady wanted to call the police and go, "Here's an idiot not wearing a mask and I think you should come arrest him," great. You want to report on other people? I wouldn't do that. I'm not the type of person to do that, nor do I think that anyone else should be. See a crime, report a crime, blah, blah, blah. I'm not against that stuff, but I believe it's my personal right to break the law, should I feel the urge. If I'm willing to pay the consequences, then that's my affair, not yours. Okay, it could go all the way from that to people telling you or your relatives or whatever, what you will do and what you won't. And people that wish to expand the power of government, I am far more likely to be against that than for it. And I've told the story of my Missouri bar things many times, and one day I'm gonna do it again here on the morning program. I'm gonna do that too, and because I want to get into it. This type of stuff is important. The most powerful and most corrupt organization in the state of Missouri is the Missouri Bar, and there's no doubt of that. And it's a something that should, at some point, be dealt with, right? And but it won't be. We all know who's in charge and who's taking over the state of Missouri and why. We know why, and it's in Missouri. It's a little bit worse than in other places because here, this is the birthplace of that. Nonpartisan, if you will. That's what they call it anyway. Nonpartisan judicial selection, right? I would much prefer elections everywhere for judge, and the reason they got rid of it years ago, according to their own publications anyway, is because unions on the east and the west of Missouri were improperly influencing who would be judge, stuff like that. who would be judges in certain counties, who is in charge, and the corrupt nature, allegedly, of that, or the undue influence that these other organizations had. Well, if you take that logical leap, which at the time was probably true, and you address it by putting the power in another organization that will become corrupted over time, which this judicial selection has, and the way, if you're unaware of how the program works, and they never tell you, you really have to go out and find out how this organization works. It's not that easy to get information on it, and nobody cares. It'd be different if more people cared. We care about electing people, but on the judicial side, it's like, it's some big mystery. It's only for those who have practiced law, who take the time to dig into how this is an alleged nonpartisan debacle, and it's not. It's absolutely partisan, and it is controlled by the Missouri Bar and those connected with the Missouri Bar. You cannot become a judge in certain places without getting through the Missouri Bar. And today's show wasn't going to be about that. It's about government overreach in the first place, and government overreach in many, many areas. And yesterday was a big day, about government overreach. Yesterday was something that I do plan on doing a complete expose of this type of thing, sunshine law requests and all of these things that have been going on for a little while. And I do plan on digging into it, but there was a hearing on it yesterday on some of these issues, and I don't want to, until there's a decision on what was happening, the case was taken under advisement and everything was going out on how it was going to end up. Till that comes out, I don't want to, talk about it too much on there. But I'm interested in discussing with other people anything regarding their judicial overreach. Okay, so and that's in any sphere that you would like to talk about it, or if anybody is interested in talking about why the tendency exists and it doesn't matter which party necessarily, although I am of the belief, because this is how it is that I'm of the belief that it's more prevalent on in the Democratic Party than it is in the Republican, but the Republicans are just as guilty of it. So let's not pretend that they're not. It's a uniparty anyway. The higher up you go, certainly on the national side, and in Missouri, we have nothing to be proud of with how our government is run. With how do we want to call it? Let's talk about nepotism, things like that. Although it may not be nepotism, it might be friendism. The way government contracts get given to people, the way positions of power are divvied up among donors and the right thinking people, and how the way the path is laid out for your succession to the next rung of power if you're in the right groups or in the right families or have the right last name, as it were. These things definitely exist, and it's a fool who believes that they do not, because they do. And it's certainly worthy of our time to discuss. Okay? And so I only put that out there here on International Flavor and Damn Radio because I do plan on taking that path. And so that's my solicitation to you. If you ever want to call in and talk about that, you can almost always interrupt whatever my train of thought, no matter how slow that train is going, whatever that train of thought is, you can almost always interrupt it with valuable stories about government overreach, because I'm truly interested in that phenomena, as you want to call it. Let's talk about where we are today. What is today? Today happens to be Thursday, December the 4th, and I will be here until 9 a.m. We have JR showing up between 2 and 4 for his really big shoe, and 4 to 6, we have Josh Butterfield in the Search for Solutions. My shows, all of our shows are put out on damradio.com/podcast, and you can listen to all prior shows and all the wonderful words of wisdom that are given to you each and every day here from Damn Radio. And my show is on damradio.com/podcast. It's also at internationalflavor.com, where they are recorded and stored for your listening pleasure at any time, should you feel like listening to back shows. And I wanted to continue today with guy did it's interesting to me, because there seems to be recently a decent amount of Western authors discussing things. Now, in Russian newspaper, like RT is picking up some other people, and Larry Johnson, here's another article written by Larry Johnson. If you listen to him, he's a former CIA analyst, has a channel on YouTube. I watch him every now and again on there, but he had an article that came out this morning on RT News in Russia. I haven't published anything recently. But I wanted to share his article with you, as well as some commentary by Scott Bessent, the genius. I say that definitely facetiously. I've never liked the guy. I've never liked his views. Can't tell you why. I just haven't. And I disagree with nearly everything he says. And it's pretty, and we'll get into that. But let's go to why, according to Larry Johnson, what he is saying, because it's one of my favorite topics, and I talk about it quite a bit, is why his article is entitled, "Why the Putin-Whitcoff Meeting Didn't Bring Any Breakthrough." And the subtitle to that is, "The ball is in Trump's court, and he is serious about achieving peace," or he seems so, "but there's a lot of work ahead." Now, I don't know if you guys, I'm probably a little on the nutty side, but when I'm flipping through my YouTube quite a bit, and over the last couple of days, and I don't know if they're fake, if they're AI, if they're what, they seem to be real. And I've seen a couple of them on Telegram too, looking at some of the Telegram channels, and they say underneath them that presently current events in Pokrovsk, in Mirnograd, the cities we talked about yesterday, and they're showing like entire battalions, large, we're talking several hundred Ukrainian soldiers standing in formation with their hands laced behind their heads, and having surrendered or been captured or whatever. And it says that this is currently in Pokrovsk, and they show these large formations, hundreds of guys standing there. But the problem I have with it is there are American, and this is the part I don't get, if it was really Russians that captured these Ukrainians, this is why I think it's either AI generated or just fakes, that if it was Russians, they wouldn't be speaking English, or have an American soldier standing there with American flag on his shirt sleeve, in Russia. So, if they were captured even in Pokrovsk. And so I don't know that I believe what I've seen. I'm going to have to look into it some more. But I know that there's been quite a few of surrenders in Pokrovsk over the last little bit, and that Russia has captured a rather large number in that area. But I don't necessarily just believe everything that is put out, regarding that. But there seems to be a whole bunch of these for some reasons. And but I don't know. We'll look into that. But anyway, Larry Johnson, the political analyst and commentator, former CIA analyst, and former member of the U.S. State Department Office of Counterterrorism. His story is, it's not too long, so I'll share it with you, what he says, and why he says that there's no real breakthrough that came up because of the Whitcoff meeting. Well, I can tell you what I think it is. It's, the unrealistic beliefs of Europe and Ukraine. They can't just give up after they've for 4 years now pumped the fact that they're winning, when they're not. And it's kind of hard for the truth to come and bite you in the ass sometimes. So that'd be my first statement on the deal. And, covering up corruption. Ukrainian parliament is looking into it now. And anyway, here's the article. I've been babbling too much here. Here's the article. U.S. President Trump's envoy, Steve Whitcoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin in Moscow. The 5-hour session focused on reviving U.S. peace proposal aimed at ending Russia's nearly 4-year war in Ukraine. This visit marked Whitcoff's 6th meeting with Putin in 2025 and Kushner's first in-person involvement in these talks. This I disagree with. Like or dislike Kushner, I disagree with using family members for this kind of thing. But, and I didn't even like it. How do I want to say this? I remember thinking very first hearing Kennedy and then his brother is going to be the attorney general. I don't remember even liking that. I just don't like it. It didn't pass my personal smell test, as it were. And I don't think this does. I don't like this. What special position does he have other than he's the son-in-law of the president? It's the same thing with Joe Biden and his son, in my view. No, I could be wrong about that. I don't care. You can think how you like about that. I just, initially, that's something I don't like. What makes him so special that, he gets to go meet Vladimir Putin? Does that mean if I was related to Trump, I'd be sent over there? Nonsense. That's not how it works. Or not how it's supposed to work, in my opinion. The U.S. delegation arrived directly from recent negotiations with Ukrainian officials in Miami and Paris, where the peace plan was refined from 28 points to 19. The media is reporting the core agenda was the updated U.S. peace framework, which emphasizes potential ceasefire. That word just, isn't going to work in the first place. And de facto border recognition involving Ukrainian concessions in Donbass region to meet Russia's territorial demands. Security guarantees for Ukraine, coordinated with European allies like France. Broader steps for implementation, including frontline adjustment and restrictions on Ukraine's military capabilities. Putin reportedly agreed with some elements of the proposal but reiterated Russia's non-negotiable positions, including full control over its new territories and limits on NATO expansion. The U.S. side pushed for Putin to soften these demands in exchange for ending hostilities, but no new wording or provisions were finalized. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov described the talks as useful and noted productive exchanges on substantive issues, but emphasized that no compromise plan has been found yet, and a lot of work remains. Russian state media and envoy Dmitriev called the session productive, but there were no agreements on specific concessions, a ceasefire timeline, or a follow-up summit between Putin and Trump, potentially slated for April to June of 2026. So what was the real purpose of this meeting? Speaking to reporters in Bishkek, the Central Asian Republic of Kyrgyzstan, last Thursday. By the way, Bishkek is one of my favorite cities. I love it over there in Kyrgyzstan. That place is a very nice city. And they have a big Chinese shopping, I don't know what you'd call it, huge, several miles of flea market called Durdoi. And you can go over there, and they have all these container shopping. Like, everybody buys their own container of whatever, suitcases, lighting, whatever, and they just open them up, close them up every night. But all day they're open, and you can go do some fabulous shopping and get all these cool products for very cheaply. Anyway, so what was the purpose of the meeting? Speaking to reporters in Bishkek, Central Asian Republic, Kyrgyzstan, last Thursday, Putin, I shared some of his comments on that. Putin explained how negotiations would be handled. During the press conference, Putin said that Foreign Minister Lavrov is responsible for handling contacts and negotiation on possible terms to end the war in Ukraine, and that he relies on Lavrov's reports from these talks while avoiding public discussion of specific proposals, which is how they always do it. In his latest comments around U.S.-Russia contacts on Ukraine, Putin indicated that the negotiation process is being conducted through professional channels, explicitly pointing to Lavrov and the foreign ministry as those leading the work on possible peace arrangements. He stressed that he is regularly briefed by Lavrov on these discussions, including on U.S.-drafted peace ideas that Moscow says draw heavily on earlier Russian proposals. While Putin was meeting with Whitcoff and Kushner, Lavrov held warm bilateral talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Lavrov's absence from the Whitcoff-Kushner meeting was a clear signal from Russia that the foundation for actual negotiations was still not in place. Putin's goal was to explain, politely and firmly, what Russia's fundamental positions are with respect to settling the war in Ukraine. I am certain, as am I, that's Johnson that's certain, and I am too, that Putin presented again the same points that he laid out on June 14th, 2024. The ball is in Trump's court. Whitcoff and Kushner's initial plan to meet Wednesday with Zelensky in Ireland was canceled. That's where Zelensky picked up his $150 million. They return instead directly to Washington, where they beefed Trump on Putin's conditions that must be agreed to before the actual negotiations, with Lavrov and Rubio sitting down, accompanied by their respective delegations, can begin. The fact that, so far, there have been no leaks to the press about the meeting with Putin tells me that Trump is serious about trying to get negotiations with Russia on track. This meeting is not the beginning of the end. Rather, I think it marks the end of the beginning. It is up to Trump to agree to Russia's terms and dispatch Rubio to make the deal with Lavrov. Now, I shared that with you because Russians, how do I want to put this? So, having been married to one, I can tell you that they, let's see, what are the words that are used to describe Americans? Bezpechny, careless, neformalny, informal, and Russians are more tochny, exact. They're more particular in general. Okay, now I don't like to generalize about people, but they believe in order. They believe in things just so, especially when it comes to government and formality and being professional. Years ago, when I lived in Washington, D.C., and I had opened a Russian gift shop in a place called Middleburg, and I had this shop, I would go to New York or Russia or wherever and pick up interesting artifacts, art, igrushki toys, stuff like that, lacquer boxes, things like that, and those nesting dolls, that kind of thing. And I was working with this guy named Vadim, and he was a Russian guy, former Soviet guy, living in New York. And we had done some work together. We had worked together. And I've always been, I don't know, my mother used to say it, everybody used to say, you're never serious about anything. You don't take things as seriously as you ought to. And that's probably true. And I was doing something with him. And we were having lunch one day, and he stopped me right in the middle of it. And he said, I've been meaning to tell you something for a while. And I was like, what were you going to tell me? He goes, and the translation of it goes something like this. He said, Sam, I don't think you get it. He said, with the way, with business people, you have to have a business relationship. And I was like, okay, how do we not have a business relationship? We've been working together for, quite some time, year. And he goes, no, he said, I don't think you get it. We are not friends. We should have, with business people, you need to have a more business-like relationship. Hang on a second. We're going to take this call and see if I can speak to this caller. Good morning, caller. How may I help you?
Morning, Samuel.
Hey, JR. How's life in the big city?
It's cold.
Yeah, it's damn cold.
Ooh, yeah, well said.
Yep. Frozen a nipple off this morning. That is not good.
No, that leaves you with two. That's too bad.
That's true. How may I help you? How may I assist you this morning?
Do you see any difference between Hunter Biden and Jared Kushner?
Definitely.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay.
And
What would if you had to boil it down to one word?
Well, Biden's a criminal.
Well, we don't know that Kushner's not a criminal.
Well, let's see. Biden is an obvious criminal.
That's two words.
Well, that's true. Well, I still would go that way. That guy certainly gets away with everything. He's certainly been propped up by his father in his position and all of those things. You could argue similar from the Kushner side by marriage or whatever, and I don't know enough about him. My comment on that was to say that I just, as a general principle, I don't like that thing. Now, some people would argue what you're probably going to, which is to say that, well, should he be written off if he's extremely qualified?
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah,
there's the word I was looking for. The judges would have also accepted merit.
Well, I'm just saying that my predisposition is to not liking that type of thing. And I don't think I said anything bad about
but
him.
You've seen the Abraham Accords, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Jared Kushner has value there. I would think it would not be a good thing to not bring in somebody who's able to accomplish world-changing things simply because he's your in-law. It's not like Trump's got everybody in his family working there.
Well, all I say is, and I will say again, is I have a general predisposition against that type of thing. You could say that Hunter Biden should have been in a similar position. He went to law school. He was involved in a bunch of stuff, but he's a freaking
Crackhead.
Crazed lunatic, and to put him in a position where the only reason that he was in that position is because of Daddy, that I am absolutely against, and I don't like it. And all I say is the predisposition. I believe I said the same thing about the Kennedys, way back when I first heard about it in school. It's like, because I remember thinking, oh, that's nice. I suppose that's how it works. If you're related to the to the president, much easier for you to find employment than it is for others, because you have the ear of that person where others do not. And that's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't disagree with your default position being no, but I think
I
Jared
didn't
Kushner
say
has
no.
proven his-
I just said it's negative. It leans that way.
Well, I was in the shower and I heard you comparing Hunter Biden to Jared Kushner, and I dropped my shampoo. I was like, hold.
Well, I appreciate
I generally don't call in.
I appreciate you correcting me. Not a problem.
Well, I'm not correcting anybody. I'm just asking you a question. Do you not see the merit?
Oh, well, I definitely see the merit.
And Jared Kushner's accomplishments, especially in the Abraham Accords front.
Well, there's sometimes, like in a corporate world. In a corporate world, you can't hire your sister, for the most part. You're not, unless it's a family-owned business, and that's different. That's a family dynasty, and that's what it's supposed to be, right? Like if Dad built the corporation, all of his sons are, Trump Inc. I don't give a crap. Run it how you like. Put them all in there. But that doesn't mean that's how the government should be run. Is all I'm saying. And but you go with what's successful. Trump's been highly successful, and the Biden era was only because you're related. That's it.
Well, I always talk about it on my show, how the nation's finally being run exactly how it's supposed to be. I don't know of any administration that's been run properly the way this one's being run. It's got to be run like a business. We have monthly freaking board / cabinet / accountability meetings every month. That's exactly how it should be.
Yeah. Well, I'm not condemning Trump or how things are being run, except I question on the international level always, that, because I disagree with how it's been done for 100 years, and maybe it's not being done quickly enough for me. If it's such a positive thing, and if it's so quickly done, like it was supposed to, like what we were sold, I can get rid of this war. Well, I could get rid of this war. I know how to get rid of it. I've said it for months and months. How you get rid of it? Quit giving U.S. intelligence to Ukraine. Quit giving them money. Quit giving them weapons. Sanction them both and move on. And stop it. Back out. But that hasn't happened, and it doesn't appear it's ever going to happen because of the deep state and the involvement in the money of all of this, and the European pipeline of all the corruption that has gone on for years and years.
The point is Donald Trump runs it like a business. He's got people around him who can get shit done, like Whitcoff, like Kushner, right? That's the whole point, is if you're going to get it done, you're going to get it done right. Trump is a transactional guy. He's a results-driven guy. That's the only thing that matters to him. Is it good for the United States or not? That's not the test for any other president that I've ever seen. Is it good for the United States? Do you think Brandon asked himself, is hiring Hunter good for the United States or not? Hell no, never crossed his mind. But that's probably the way Trump was looking at it when he brought Kushner in. Is it good for the United States? Answer, yes. Go in there, run the play, boy.
Well, I'd like to see the play result in something.
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. There's a lot of moving parts. We'll get it figured out.
Agreed, and I hope you're right. and I'm eager to see some result.
Why so impatient, man?
Well, because I can end this war in 24 hours. I was sold that. Was I not?
Was that before or after they started talking about sending nukes over?
That was when Trump was running for office.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and then next thing you know, Brandon's talking about sending nukes over. But we're getting off topic.
Well, that's true.
I just don't automatically have a problem with Jared Kushner just because he's an in-law. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't say I have a problem with Jared
I don't believe
Kushner.
he should be compared to Hunter Biden. That's all.
Okay, I will not do that
No
again.
accomplishments. There's well, you can do whatever you want. Brothers sharpen brothers.
I like to be quizzed, especially by a man as sharp as you.
No, I was only asking a question what the main difference was between the two that you were comparing, and basically categorizing in the same bucket.
Well, I also threw in the Kennedys, who arguably accomplished quite a bit.
See, I wasn't around in those days like you. However, I don't know if Bobby Kennedy was a good attorney or not. I literally have no idea. I can't answer that.
Well, I believe he you had to he surrounded himself with people he trusted, and
there you go.
So my default position is I'm against that kind of thing. Especially in government. In government, I'm against it. In family, I don't give a crap. In your family business, it should be that way, especially if you're trying to create a dynasty. But government is not the place for dynasty, and so my default position is against that sort of thing.
We really don't have a major problem with nepotism in the executive branch, at least that I know of.
No,
other than the examples we've given here.
Well, that's true.
And you're right about Bobby Kennedy. That the adjective for that one would be trust. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, and I get why it was done. I mean, it was the right time for that kind of thing, I suppose, and I get it. And look where it got them, And yeah, and so
you take on the deep state without a plan.
Agreed. And look where it's almost gotten Trump. With going against the same forces, that you and I can fairly safely, we don't have to, for the most part, worry about getting. I mean, we do. Some of the things we say about being anti-government or anti-whatever, or against the deep state, against this. Those are not things that a lot of people take positions on, in part because of the fact that it could be a life decision.
Hey, can you stop by the studio today during my show for like 5 minutes to help me explain why I was absent yesterday?
I can do that. I'll be here.
Thank you.
Well, I'll be here at a time between 2 and 4.
I would appreciate it.
I announced you earlier.
I don't know what I can or cannot say.
You can say whatever you like. It's your show.
Regarding my absence yesterday.
Well, we shall discuss.
Please and thank you.
I will be there.
Carry on.
Yep, carry on, like baggage.
See you, bro.
See ya.
There he goes.
And we always appreciate our founder of the feast for dropping by telephonically in the show. We love that kind of thing and like having him. So there you have it. I haven't picked any Christmas song, and I was going to go through the Christmas list for when I depart today. But then I was thinking, well, I'm not bumping up against another show coming at 9, so I will just... What I like to do is take the songs after me, and at least the first group of them, and pick like the next half hour of music that is my music at the end, and so now that the Christmas is thrown in there, there's a couple that I like to throw into there myself, and I think I will. I'll find some that I like to put in. So if you want to see, since there's no show after me right away this morning, I'm gonna probably slide in some musical numbers that I get to choose. Let's see. Here's what Scott Bessent told us. And this came out today as well. He says, Scott Bessent has called the outlet, the New York Times, a fever swamp, and accuses it of publishing fake stories about President Trump's mental health. Now, I'm no Bessent fan. JR might call and tell me that I should be, but I'm no fan of this guy. But I found this to be an interesting read and an interesting comment by him, because I happen to agree that our news sources somewhat lack truthfulness, lack professionalism. And let's see. According to Besant, New York Times is no longer a credible newspaper. He accuses the outlet of misleading and biased reporting on Trump's mental health. During a live event hosted by the New York Times on Wednesday, Besant called the newspaper a fever swamp and it said it contributed to one of the greatest scandals of all time by downplaying and covering up former President Joe Biden's mental decline when he was in office. He argued that the same outlet now published what he describes as 100% fake stories about Trump. Besant added that he no longer reads the Times. Well, if he doesn't, then how does he understand that it's 100% fake? And warned that in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it will not be regarded as the paper of record anymore. He dismissed a recent article suggesting that Trump, 79, has shown signs of fatigue, keeps shorter public days, and has appeared drowsy during midday meetings. I appear drowsy during midday meetings, and it's not reported at all. The Treasury Secretary said the claims are false, joking that Trump only called him twice at 2 a.m. last week instead of 3 times. Trump previously condemned the piece, calling it a hit job, and saying the outlet is an enemy of the people. He added that he recently had a perfect physical exam and a comprehensive cognitive test, which he aced. Now, I heard some of that. I can't remember if it was, I think it was on JR's show, that Carolyn Levitt that's released it like the next day, released the whole report, said, hey, he kicked it. And Trump made fun of some reporter and said, you couldn't have passed it, or something like that. I thought it was pretty comical. In recent months, Trump has publicly attacked several news outlets, launched a White House media bias tracker, and engaged in high-profile disputes and multi-billion-dollar lawsuits with publications including New York Times and CBS. Last month, Trump threatened to sue BBC for $1 billion, accusing it of interfering in the 2024 presidential election by manipulating public perception through a spliced edit of his January 6, 2021 speech. The Telegraph previously revealed that in a BBC Panorama episode, Trump's remarks were made nearly an hour apart and were combined and paired with protest footage filmed before Trump began speaking. The scandal surrounding this episode led to the resignation of the broadcaster's director general and head of news. I like that stuff. I do like that Trump goes after people that go after him. I like that he doesn't put up with it. Let's talk about Pornhub, just because it's always fun to talk about Pornhub. The ex-owner of Pornhub is looking to buy Russian oil giant Western assets. This according to Reuters. Lukoil is moving to divest its overseas holdings after U.S. imposed sanctions on the company in October. So, former Pornhub owner Bernd Bergmer is considering the purchase of sanctioned Russian oil major Lukoil international assets, said Reuters yesterday. Washington imposed sanctions on Lukoil in October, and Lukoil has overseas holdings worth an estimated $22 billion, and Lukoil accepted an offer from energy trader Gunvor Group to buy its subsidiary holding all foreign assets, although the deal fell through after the U.S. Treasury accused Gunvor of having Kremlin ties. So according to Reuters, Bergmeyer has now approached the Treasury about a potential acquisition. through his lawyer, he declined to comment on his intentions, but did signal interests. Obviously, Lukoil International GmbH would be a great investment, and anybody would be fortunate to have the privilege of owning those assets, he told Reuters, while refusing to specify which assets he sought or whether he had already approached the company. U.S. Treasury declined to comment. The Austrian financier is the former secretive majority owner of MindGeek, the parent company of the adult website Pornhub, with his identity revealed by investigative reporting in 2021 after years of offshore structuring. He sold his stake when the firm was acquired by Canadian private equity group in 2023. He is estimated to have a net worth of about 1.4 billion euro, with investments in real estate, agriculture, and private ventures. U.S. Treasury last month gave companies interested in acquiring Lukoil's foreign assets clearance to begin talks. Treasury approval is required because the firm is under U.S. sanctions, meaning any transaction would be frozen without its license. The clearance runs until December 13th. Media reports say multiple buyers have signaled interest in these assets, including ExxonMobil and Chevron. However, Lukoil has reportedly indicated it wants to sell them as a single package, complicating talks for buyers only eyeing specific holdings. Lukoil earlier said it is in discussions with several potential buyers. Moscow condemns Western sanctions as politically motivated and illegal and warns that they will backfire. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the situation with Lukoil highlights the illegal trade restrictions imposed by the U.S. that are unacceptable and hurt international trade. So I've been paying quite a bit of attention, or trying to pay attention to this asset theft. Okay, I don't like these things like the prior story that I just told you about sanctions and the privatization westward, if you will, of Eastern-based assets like the Lukoil assets that are held outside of Russia, the 2022 sanctions, whichever ones, and the ones that were just announced that went into effect in October against Lukoil that they are putting out there, that the $22 billion worth of assets that they are talking about, that the West forces the East to sell to somebody in the West, or they'll remain under. I mean, what if China wanted to buy them? You know, you have to have U.S. approval to say that you get out of sanctions. All right, I frankly, I don't like sanctions. Never have. You know, I just don't think they're an accurate, and I think that long term they hurt more than they help. So I do talk about that, but I also talk about the theft and fairly frequently give you my opinion on the attempted theft of Russia's $300 billion that is being held in Belgium, and the continued discussions and attempts to steal this money, by the West, that they just want to steal. And it's okay to steal Russia's money if you accuse them of something, right? You accuse Russia of being to blame for Ukraine, right? I disagree with that foundation, but then you use that foundation, that fundamental incorrect fact, as an excuse to steal from Russia. And that's what Ursula von der Leyen is attempting to do. And Belgium has rejected it. And I've been following this story, and I try to keep an eye on it For sure. You know, I'm interested. Now, I think eventually they're going to steal this money, no matter how you slice it. The money will be stolen. It's just a question of how how it gets stolen. And they're not back. They want to steal this money, and they want to give it to Ukraine, whether it's through a loan or through whatever. And they've had many different iterations of how they take this money and provide it to Ukraine, right? So here's the latest round in that. This came out. I read a story about it last night, and there's another article on it this morning. And so I'm going to share that with you. Let's see. Belgium has rejected European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen latest plan to seize. I always feel like she ought to be like Schultz. I know nothing, and she's definitely like Sergeant Schultz, and she doesn't know much when you hear her talk. The only one worse is that Kaja Kallas. Well, no, there's quite a few of them in this unelected commission that is taking over all of Europe and telling them what to do. And so they're going to get this money. They'll figure out how to steal it, and they will steal it. And Belgium eventually will come around, and as I'll explain here in a minute. But Belgium has rejected European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen's latest plan to seize Russia's immobilized central bank assets to arm Ukraine. Country's foreign minister, Belgium's, Maxime Prévost, has warned that the move would have potentially disastrous consequences for his country. Now, not that the European Commission president cares about that. This controversial week gave the bloc two choices to provide Kyiv with $90 billion, $105 billion, that's 90 billion euro, over the next 2 years. One is EU-level borrowing backed by the bloc's budget, right? So they are going to give a loan for them. Another is the long-debated reparations loan, like they get to determine that Russia will give reparations to Ukraine, which would require institutions holding immobilized Russian cash to transfer the funds to a new loan for Kyiv. Belgium, which hosts most of the frozen assets through Euroclear, it's a bank depository, opposes the scheme and has done so for a long time. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, Prévost reiterated that his country considers the loan scheme the worst of all the options for aiding Kyiv and accuses the Commission of downplaying their concerns. A reparations loan scheme entails consequential economic, financial, and legal risk. It is not acceptable to use the money and leave us, Belgium, alone facing the risks, Prévost said. Belgium has warned it would bear the brunt of any Russian legal action over the move and demand EU guarantees, including liquidity for Euroclear, mutual risk, and burden sharing, meaning that Belgium isn't going to be the only people holding the bag when a loan doesn't get repaid. And so they want, and have wanted for a long time, they want any loan guaranteed by the EU. And the EU doesn't want to do that because they want to steal. It's better to steal somebody else's money than take a loan out on your own. So Prévost argued that joint EU debt is the easiest, fastest, most predictable option that distributes the burden equally among member states. Well, a lot of member states are against it. Analysts say joint borrowing is tricky because it has many critics due to its immediate impact on national treasuries. And unlike the loan scheme, which only needs a qualified majority, it requires unanimity to pass. EU ambassador. So if you steal the money, you only need a qualified majority. But if you borrow the money, it has to be a unanimous deal. So this is why I think they're going to steal the money eventually. They'll get to it. And EU ambassadors were set to begin discussions on the options late Wednesday, aiming for a deal before the December 18 summit. Belgium is not alone in criticizing the loan scheme. I'm not against, I am one of the people criticizing the loan scheme as well. Media reports claim that the European Central Bank refused to support this, while the U.S. signals it wants the EU to return Russia's frozen funds once a peace deal with Ukraine is signed. Well, if that's true, now that when Trump had a proposal that he was putting out some of the things, he was saying that 100 billion of the 300 billion should be pledged into a fund with the U.S. Matching it to rebuild Ukraine through investment purposes, and the profits come back to America. That's some of the business stuff that JR was talking about a little bit earlier. I can't say that I would be as against that, because that's not just taking the money and handing it to Ukraine. Why would Ukraine get the money in the first place? You could argue that Ukraine forced this war anyway, along with the Western curators or masters who have been pumping this agenda for years, to create a Russian boogeyman that doesn't exist. So the U.S. wants the money to go back to Russia after the war, after a peace deal is signed. They get the money back. Russia, of course, describes the scheme as theft, because that's what it is, and warns that tapping its funds would further damage, in my opinion, confidence in Western financial systems. And remember, Russia has promised to retaliate by seizing assets that they control of Western banks, of Western funds that are held in Russia. Because that would be done too. So there you have it. You remember me talking about the shipping attacks by Ukraine on Russian shadow fleet that took place in Turkish waters yesterday? Well, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan pointed at the widening geography of the Ukraine crisis. They're worried about this. The recent naval drone attacks on vessels off Turkey's Black Sea coast, carried out by Ukraine, could make the region inaccessible to trade and human transport, said Turkish Foreign Minister. In the past week, explosives-laden sea drones have struck 2 oil tankers and a sunflower oil tanker in Turkish territorial water, according to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure's General Directorate of Maritime Affairs. Here's his quote. "It is turning the Black Sea into an area closed to trade and inaccessible to human transport due to the danger it possesses. Very frightening," he said. Foreign Minister warned that the geography of Ukraine conflict is increasingly spreading, while methods being used are also becoming widespread. They're attacking things. The incidents reported by Ankara involved 2 Gambian flag tankers, the Kairos and the Virat, which I told you about, struck off Turkey's coast while en route to Novorossiysk. Several Western media outlets, citing a Ukrainian state official, reported that the assault was carried out as part of a joint operation involving the SBU, security service, in Ukraine, and the Kiev's Navy. Both tankers had been previously sanctioned by Western states for transporting oil. Russia has denied operating a shadow fleet. Earlier this week, Turkish transport ministry said the Russian tanker Midvolga carrying sunflower oil was attacked about 80 miles off the country's coast en route to Georgia. Now, Kiev denies attacking that tanker. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Monday that attacks on commercial ships in the exclusive economic zone are unacceptable and warned against a very worrying escalation. Russian Foreign Ministry denounces these raids as terrorist attacks, and Peskov Dmitry also accuses Ukraine of encroaching on Turkish sovereignty. And Putin calls it piracy, like I let you know the other day when I first told you about these stories and Putin's interview on these particular questions. He calls it piracy. And frankly, I happen to agree with him. You don't attack peaceful vessels, whether you agree with what they're shipping or not. So I don't think that's where the war should be a-going. That's what I think. So there you have it. Well, there's no more exciting article than the Pornhub. Wasn't that exciting to be covering? Let's see. But remember when Trump made an offer that Russia could rejoin the G8 and we go back to having a G8 instead of a G7? Well, story today says Putin is not interested. Russia has no plans to return to the Western-dominated G7, saying that its significance continues to dwindle. He was in India the other day, and in an interview with India on Thursday, published ahead of his visit to the country, the Russian leader noted that many G7 economies now lag behind emerging economies in purchasing power parity terms. And I've explained that to you before, how that works. It basically takes your GDP and equates it or gives it kind of a balancing scale on what it will purchase. For example, if you are in Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, you can buy a vehicle brand new in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $10,000, where it costs you at least 2 to 3 times that amount to buy the same vehicle or same sort of vehicle in a Western economy. And so they equate, using PPP, purchasing power parity, they equate GDP based upon that. And so a person making basically, let's say, for example, just to make the addition easier, that in the United States you could live comfortably on $30,000 a year. In some of these other countries, you could buy the exact same things that you could live on here for $30,000 for $10,000, and that's quite a few places in the world where a lot of people are. In fact, a lot of retirees are doing that now, where they get their Social Security and move out of the country because it's much cheaper to live in Uruguay, Paraguay, Colombia, some beautiful South American country. You can go and live there quite well on your Social Security alone, and live quite well because you're making triple what a person there would make earning only your Social Security. So you can go there and live quite well, more than anybody else. JR's got these TVs up, and they keep on showing, they've done it 3 times today, these narco traffic boats, alleged, because there's no proof that they are. But we keep blowing them up, and I'm very much against that. I don't even like to see it. But I don't want to mess with his TV, so I won't change it. but they keep on going over there, and I look over there all the time. But anyway, I'm telling you, that part of the story because Russia doesn't want to rejoin the G7, and the reason that was given is because he notes that many G7 economies actually are behind other developing economies, especially when you equate it in purchasing power parity terms, and that the group's share of global economy as a whole has been steadily shrinking anyway. He conceded that the G7, which includes, here are the members, U.S., U.K., France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and Japan, remains an important platform, but all 7 of those as a what do you call it? As a portion of the global trade or global GDP have been declining over the years. People work there, make decisions, discuss things, and God bless them, said Putin. According to Putin, he isn't seeking to rejoin this group and did not discuss the issue with Steve Whitcoff and Jared Kushner during the talks about Ukraine earlier in the week. Putin noted that he stopped attending the group summits even before the Western-backed coup in Kiev in 2014. And Moscow has been excluded from the at that time G8 after Crimea seceded from Ukraine and voted to join Russia in a public referendum, and Russia took it out. In June, Trump suggested that kicking Russia out of the G8 was a big mistake. I think it was too, and argued that keeping Moscow on the inside might have prevented the escalation in Ukraine in 2022. And at the time, Dmitry Peskov agreed it was a big mistake then to exclude Russia, but noted that the club had lost practical significance. And since its exclusion, Russia has focused on strengthening cooperation with other international platforms, BRICS being, a primary one, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, another one. RIC, Russia, India, China, is also a big deal, which I've talked about before. BRICS currently accounts for 46% of the world's population and 36% of global GDP. And that's Western-based financial institutions that have come up with those numbers. So let's see. There were Ukrainian parliament, and I may have told you a little bit about this yesterday because Zakharova talked about it. Maria Zakharova talked about this in an address that she had the other day. And Ukrainian parliament has passed a new law against Russian. Okay, so here's how important it is. The Ukrainian parliament passed an amendment on Wednesday stripping Russian of its protection under the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. Over the past decade, Ukraine has steadily restricted the use of Russian in public life, limiting or barring its use in media, education, government services, and in the service industry. But it remains the first and primary language for many Ukrainians, especially in the east of the country and in large cities. We are removing Russian from the scope of protection, Culture Minister Tatiana Berezhnaya said in a statement following the vote in the Verkhovna Rada. She noted that 264 MPs supported the measure. Berezhnaya argued that an earlier Ukrainian translation of the charter incorrectly interpreted the term minority, treating it as an ethnicity rather than a small language community. So we fixed it, she said. Now the Ukrainian translation corresponds to the authentic content of the charter, she wrote, adding that the decision will strengthen Ukrainian as a state language. Adding to the comment on the amendment, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman Maria Zakharova said Kiev's policy of forced de-Russification has increasingly faltered and has had the opposite effect. 2/3 of students in Kiev don't speak Ukrainian in class, and 82% don't speak it during breaks, she added, citing statistics published by Ukrainian ombudsman, language spokesman, in other words, last month. Despite all the bans, fines, bullying, harassment, persecution, people don't want to forget their native Russian language and still want to speak it, Zakharova said, arguing that the trend is so obvious as to be impossible to hide. And Moscow has long condemned Ukraine's language policies. And one of Russia's key peace demands has always been, to resolve the conflict, that Kiev repeal laws that violate the human rights of Russian speakers in the country. So I spent a little bit of time going through these encirclements in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, a couple other areas. Kupyansk, I think, was in a cauldron too, and they're talking about how Ukraine is steadily losing territory in the east, and Russia is continuing to seize more. Might be going a little slow. Well, report yesterday said that, and this is from Bild. Bild put the German newspaper put this out. Says that Russian forces have cut off supply lines to soldiers trapped in Dmitrov, and so 5 Ukrainian brigades are encircled in the town of Dmitrov, which is Mirnograd, known as it in Ukraine, after Russian forces captured the nearby city of Krasnoarmeysk, Pokrovsk. I told you about that. A Ukrainian soldier on the ground told the German outlet Bild, Russian army has cut off all supply routes to the 1,000 to 2,000 Ukrainian troops trapped in the city, said Bild on Tuesday. To be honest, the situation is critical, the Ukrainian serviceman said, adding that his group is only being supplied through drone deliveries. He added that Russian soldiers have taken control of almost every single building between Dmitrov and the parts of the Donbass still controlled by the Ukrainian military. The soldier criticized the actions of his commanders, which he said deployed many units to the area but failed to retain control over supply routes leading to the city. Russian President Putin said on Tuesday that Kiev is trying to regain control over Krasnoarmeysk to relieve Dmitrov at any cost. Remember me telling you about that in Putin's presser the other day. He said they keep throwing these ill-equipped troops in just to meet lines and they're dying by the hundreds in a failed effort, and it will be a failed effort to retake either Krasnoarmeysk or that's Pokrovsk or Dmitrov, which is Mirnograd. The Krasnoarmeysk-Dmitrov conglomeration, along with several other small towns and settlements, is the second largest urban cluster still under partial Ukrainian control, and it's been an area of intense fighting over the past months, culminating in Russian troops seizing final control over Krasnoarmeysk, Pokrovsk on Monday. Russian Defense Ministry publishes videos of Russian soldiers clearing buildings in the city, and Zelensky has continues to deny the encirclement of troops in the area and accuses Moscow of exaggerating its gains. He downplays the battlefield losses while, having his hand out begging for more money. So in October, Putin said that over 10,000 Ukrainian troops had been surrounded in that area, as well as in the city of Kupyansk and Kharkov. And those cities, Kupyansk isn't isn't 100% under Russian control, and neither is Dmitrov or Mirnograd, but it's getting closer and closer every day. And Pokrovsk, Krasnoarmeysk, is under continued efforts to seize it. I want to share one more thing with you about Yermak, and I think that the last person left in Ukraine after Yermak and his departure is Zelensky. Okay, and I've spoken enough about this over the last couple of weeks in this corruption, this enormous corruption going on in Ukraine, that it's hard to not know where this is ultimately going to lead. I've heard quite a few comments, and I happen to agree with this. Some of the commentary that I've heard that says that that Zelensky himself will be forced out by the end of the year. It appears to be that is where this is leading. There was one Ukrainian channel that said they expect it in the next couple of weeks, and that was about 3-4 days ago. And but there's quite a few more who say in the next month. I'm in that category. Might not be, by the end of the year, but I believe that's where we are headed. Is that the old Z monster will be gone, and it probably be the ambassador to England who was sent over there. But I want to share this story about Yermak's fall. Might not be, and this is by a guy named Vitaly Rumshin, who's a political analyst. And what he says is that Zelensky may be next, but it might not quite be time just yet. And I like that, this is an interesting perspective as well. He says the corruption scandal that has dominated Ukrainian politics for weeks, and I've talked about quite a bit, has finally reached its first major endpoint. Under mounting domestic pressure and international force, Vladimir Zelensky dismissed Andrei Yermak, his chief of staff, closest confidant, and the second most powerful man in the country. For years, Yermak was widely viewed as the gray cardinal of Ukraine politics. Together with businessman Timur Mindich, he oversaw a sprawling corruption network in the energy and defense sectors, operating under the nicknames of Ali Baba and Alla Borisovna. The significance of Yermak's removal is difficult to overstate. If anything of consequence happened in Ukraine after February 2022, Yermak was usually at the center of it. He was Zelensky's principal political engineer, building a vertical of power that effectively sidelined the Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada and concentrated authority inside the president's office. It was Yermak who placed loyalists throughout government ministries, security bodies, and regional administrations. They organized and orchestrated campaigns against political rivals, who disrupted elements of local self-government, and who led the quiet purge of any figure seen as a threat, from mayors to armed forces commander, the former one, who I was just saying might be the next president, Valery Zaluzhny. That's the ambassador to England. In other words, Yermak worked tirelessly to ensure every major process in Ukraine ran through him and his boss, and he came very close to succeeding. Had the Yermak tandem succeeded in its summer offensive against the anti-corruption bodies, NABU and SAPO, Zelensky might well have emerged as a kind of autocrat. But the former comedian backed away at a decisive moment, a hesitation that ultimately sealed his friend's fate. The consequences for Zelensky are severe. First, he has lost control over the vertical power that Yermak spent years constructing. It was Yermak, not Zelensky, who coordinated the government, the security bloc, the intelligence agencies through a network of personal loyalists. With him gone, no obvious successor exists who can replicate that degree of influence. The machinery may keep running for a time, but the operator is gone. Second, Zelensky's authority within his own camp has been badly damaged. The speed with which he abandoned Yermak after only one search of his apartment sent shockwaves through the elite. If Zelensky could shed his closest ally without a fight, what does that signal to everyone else? Ukrainian media is already reporting that members of the leader's team are seeking new patrons. Wonder if Zaluzhny's one of them. Loyalty in Kiev has always been transactional. Now it is openly fragile. This weakening inevitability affects negotiations with Washington, where Yermak played a central role. Some commentators argue that his departure will soften Ukraine's stance, given that his successor, Rustem Umerov, is seen as more flexible. But that misreads the dynamic. Ukraine's uncompromising position on peace talks has always been Zelensky's own. Yermak merely articulated it. Whoever replaces him is going to deliver the same message. The only force that could alter Kiev's negotiating posture is not a personnel change, but a deepening political crisis. And that crisis is already well underway. Sensing vulnerability, Ukraine opposition has launched a coordinated attack. The parties of Pyotr Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko have jointly issued an ultimatum demanding the dissolution of the cabinet and allocation of ministerial posts to opposition factions. Meanwhile, internal dissent is growing inside Zelensky's servant of the party people. Several MPs have openly complained about how Zelensky and Yermak sidelined the Rada anyway. Some are now considering leaving the faction and if even for defect, Zelensky no longer has a majority. He would no longer be able to pass laws, including the budget, without seeking support from those hostile to him. That opens the door to political blackmail. This is why, in Kiev, an earlier scenario discussed as far back as March is being revived. In this scenario, Zelensky is pressured into resigning, and Tymoshenko, appointed the Speaker of the Rada beforehand, becomes the acting president, and in that role, she signs a peace agreement with Russia, ends the war on terms shaped by political necessity rather than a battlefield fantasy. How likely is this? It's not imminent, but no longer unthinkable. For now, Zelensky retains the backing of his Western European sponsors, who are not ready for the conflict to end and are determined to prevent the total collapse of Ukraine. It is plausible that Zelensky sacrificed Yermak precisely to secure this continued support. Remember, he just got money, $150 million from Ireland, and he was just promised another $500 million from Norway. It is plausible that Zelensky sacrificed Yermak just because of this. Judging by recent comments, Emmanuel Macron publicly is defending Zelensky against questions of corruption, so that strategy might actually have worked. The answer will emerge soon enough. One thing is already clear: the fall of Yermak is not simply a corruption scandal. It's the first major fracture in a system Zelensky built, a system that relied heavily on one man's power. With that shaken, Ukraine is entering a new phase of internal struggle. And as always, when politics in Kiev are turbulent, the consequences rarely stay confined to its own borders. Brew some tea. Things are about to get even more interesting. I appreciate you being on the show today. My name is Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. I'll be here every morning from 7:30 to 9, giving my commentary on a wide variety of stuff. In the meantime, enjoy your freezing cold day and stay safe out there. JR's on at 2 o'clock. Have a listen.